My name is Vesa, and I belong to the Ithran, a small species from a quiet moon called Dorith. We are not large. We are not strong. Our bodies are built for running, not fighting. For most of our history, we survived by staying small and staying hidden. That is why, when the council told me I would be working beside a human, my whole body went cold. Everyone in the galaxy had heard of him. His name was Callum Reyes, but almost nobody called him that. They called him the Last Line, because during the war between the Coalition and the Vren Empire, he was the one soldier who did not fall back when every other unit did. Stories said he stood alone at an outpost for 3 days, holding a position that should have been impossible to hold. Stories said the Vren commanders refused to send more soldiers against that outpost, because none of them came back the same. I did not know which parts of the story were true. I only knew that when his name was said out loud, people went quiet. Even other humans looked uneasy when they spoke of him. That told me enough. If his own kind feared him a little, what chance did someone like me have? The assignment was simple on paper. A joint research station near the edge of Coalition space needed extra hands to catalog old war supplies before they were sent for recycling. It was safe work, they said. Boring work. I did not care about boring. I cared about who I would be working with. When I arrived at the station, I saw him before anyone told me who he was. I simply knew. He was taller than any human I had met before, with shoulders that looked like they were built to carry something heavy for a very long time. There was a long scar along one side of his jaw, pale against his skin. He was sitting alone at the end of a long table, eating in silence, while everyone else sat far away from him, as if an invisible wall surrounded his chair. I remember my hands shaking as I picked up my own tray. Every instinct in my body told me to sit as far from him as possible. My people are shaped by generations of hiding from bigger, stronger creatures. My legs wanted to carry me to the opposite end of the room, but the only open seat was across from him. I sat down slowly, keeping my eyes on my tray, hoping he would not look up. He did anyway. "You're new," he said. His voice was low, but not unkind in tone. Still, I flinched at the sound of it, the way my ancestors might have flinched at the sound of a predator's growl. "Yes," I managed to say. "I am Vesa, from Dorith." He nodded once. "Callum," he said, as if I did not already know exactly who he was. I forced myself to eat, though my stomach felt tight. I kept waiting for something to happen. I did not know what. Perhaps a sharp word, perhaps a cold stare, perhaps nothing at all except the crushing weight of being near someone the whole galaxy called dangerous. Instead, he simply ate his meal in silence, glancing toward the window every so often, as if watching for something only he could see. That night, I could not sleep. I kept thinking about the stories. I imagined the outpost he was said to have held alone, imagined the sounds of that battle, imagined what kind of person could stand through something like that without breaking. My mind built him into something almost inhuman, a wall of scars and quiet fury. The next morning, my hands trembled as I tried to open a storage container that had rusted shut. I pulled and pulled, but my strength was not enough. I heard footsteps behind me, and froze, my whole body tensing, before I even turned around. It was him. "Let me," he said simply, and before I could answer, he reached past me and pulled the lid free with one motion. He did not say anything else. He did not smirk, or make a comment about my weak arms, or use the moment to remind me how much stronger he was. He simply placed the lid aside and walked back to his own work, as if it had cost him nothing at all. I stood there for a long moment, staring at the open container, trying to understand what had just happened. I had expected mockery. I had expected, at the very least, some quiet reminder of how small I was compared to him. Instead, I received only quiet help, offered without any expectation of thanks. Over the next several days, small moments like that kept happening. When my translator device broke, he fixed it without being asked, murmuring something about old military-grade parts being more reliable than the newer models. When a supply crate nearly fell from a high shelf, he caught it before it could strike anyone, moving faster than I thought someone his size could move. When another worker made a cruel joke about my species being too soft for real work, he said nothing threatening at all. He simply looked at the man, said, "That's enough," and the man stopped talking immediately. I began to notice something strange. He never raised his voice. He never postured, or reminded anyone of his reputation. If anything, he seemed to want people to forget it entirely. One evening, I found him sitting outside the station, looking up at the stars. The station's twin suns had already set, and the sky above us was full of distant lights. I almost turned back, but something made me stay. Perhaps curiosity had finally grown stronger than fear. "May I sit here?" I asked. He looked surprised, as if he had not expected anyone to willingly choose to sit near him. "Sure," he said, shifting slightly to make room. For a while, neither of us spoke. The quiet between us did not feel as heavy as I expected. Finally, I found the courage to ask the question that had been sitting in my chest since the day I arrived. "Is it true?" I asked. "The story about the outpost, about you standing alone for 3 days." He was quiet for a long moment, long enough that I thought he might not answer at all. When he finally spoke, his voice was different than before. Softer, tired. "Some of it," he said. "Not the way people tell it, though." "What do you mean?" He looked down at his hands before answering. "There were others with me at first. Good people. One by one, they got hurt, or had to be pulled back. By the end, I was the only one who could still stand. I didn't hold that outpost because I was strong or fearless. I held it because if I stepped back, the people behind me, civilians, medics, kids from a nearby settlement, would have had nowhere left to go. So I stayed. Not because I wasn't afraid. I was terrified the entire time." I sat in silence, trying to reshape everything I thought I knew about him. The stories had turned him into a monster wrapped in armor, a symbol of fear. But the man sitting beside me spoke of terror, not power. He spoke of protecting others, not destroying enemies. "Why does no one tell that part of the story?" I asked quietly. He gave a small, tired smile. "Fear travels faster than truth. It's easier for people to imagine a monster who scared away an army than a frightened man who simply refused to leave people behind." I did not know what to say. My entire understanding of him had rested on the loudest, most frightening version of his history. I had never once considered that the truth might be softer, and somehow heavier, than the myth. Days turned into weeks at the station. My fear of him slowly faded, replaced by something else entirely, something I did not yet have a word for. I began to notice small things about him that had nothing to do with war or fame. The way he hummed quietly to himself while repairing old equipment. The way he always made sure the youngest workers ate before he did. The way his eyes softened whenever he looked at the stars, as if searching for a place he still missed. One afternoon, a small malfunction in the station's cooling system caused a burst of scalding steam to fill one of the lower corridors. I happened to be walking through at the wrong moment, and before I could react, the door behind me sealed shut from the heat sensors, trapping me inside with the rising steam. Panic rooted me to the spot. My people are not built for danger. Our first instinct is always to freeze, hoping stillness will make the danger pass us by. I remember pressing myself against the wall, coughing, my vision blurring from both fear and heat. Then the door was forced open from the other side, metal groaning under strain, and Callum stepped through despite the warnings blaring around him. He did not hesitate. He did not calculate the danger to himself before acting. He simply reached me, wrapped an arm around me, and carried me out through the steam until we reached the clear corridor beyond. Once we were safe, he knelt down to check if I was hurt, his expression tight with worry. "Are you all right?" he asked, his voice urgent in a way I had never heard from him before. I nodded, though my chest was still tight from both the heat and the shock of what had just happened. "You didn't have to do that," I whispered. "You could have." "I wasn't going to leave you in there," he said simply, as if the idea of doing otherwise had never even crossed his mind. I stared at him, this man the entire galaxy feared, kneeling in front of me with nothing but concern in his eyes. There was no pride in his expression, no expectation of gratitude. He had risked himself without a second thought, the same way he had held that outpost years ago, not because it made him powerful, but because leaving others behind was something he simply could not do. For the first time since I had met him, I was not afraid of him at all. Instead, I felt something warmer settle into my chest, something that made my throat tighten and my eyes sting. "Thank you," I finally managed to say. He offered a small, tired smile. You don't have to thank me for that. I opened my mouth to respond, but no words came. All the fear I had carried since the day I arrived, all the dread built from stories and whispers, dissolved into something I could not describe. I was not looking at a monster, or a legend, or a weapon the galaxy feared. I was looking at someone who simply refused to let others suffer if he could help it, no matter the cost to himself. In the weeks that followed, I stopped flinching when his name was mentioned. I stopped seeing him as the terrifying figure from old war stories. Instead, I saw him exactly as he was underneath all of it, tired, gentle, and endlessly kind, carrying a reputation he never wanted and never once used to make himself feared. The galaxy still tells stories about the last line, the human who held an outpost alone and made an empire retreat. They speak of him with awe and unease, as if he were something more than human, something to be feared from a distance. But I know the truth now. I know the quiet man who fixed broken equipment without being asked, who defended strangers without raising his voice, who carried me out of danger without a moment's hesitation. His fame terrified me once. His kindness left me without words. And even now, when I think back to that first day at the station, when I sat across from him with my hands shaking and my heart pounding, I understand that fear was never the truest thing about him. Kindness was. It simply took me longer to see it than it should have.